Okay, guys, welcome back. Let's see. You are working in your assignment, your project. Please do not forget to submit. Hopefully by now, everything is set up. You have your team, you are working, you are performing activities and do your programming. Remember, we're going to review, yes, your program, but this is not a programming class. So do your best in the program, obviously. You need to finish the program, obviously. But something that we're going to be checking is your taiga, your task, features, and so on, that you really follow the process, not only kind of report something there and something here and everyone working something different. We're going to be reviewing that. So yes, it could be the case that you did a great piece of software, but if you didn't follow the process, you do not get full points. Yes, that is the case. Again, programming is important, but it's not the core, right? This is not 110, one thing. Okay, so today I am going to cover our last topic about estimation. I am sure that a big question there is we talk about the estimation of the activities. We talk about these hours is the best. We talk about the story points. And I am sure that you have this idea like, well, sometimes for some projects, it could be kind of difficult to even figure out if this is a 1 or a 10 or a 1 or a 2. If you do not have experience doing something, any number could be like fake. So we need to talk a little bit more about estimation and an option for that, tools that are available. That is our next topic, the last one today. Hopefully I finish. And next lecture, my goal is the full review. And yes, I know that we have a quiz that is missing there. Don't worry, we're going to do another one, as I promised. So you have an assignment, we need to do a quiz, we need to cover one more topic, and we're going to do a review. Next week, your final exam, Monday, May the 2nd. So I post an announcement with the time. Do not forget. Good. With your final exam, you have basically everything that you need to calculate your final grades. Yeah.
What's the difference between features and on the product backlog?
Not anything. I mean, in the product backlog, you have product backlog items, and your items could be any of those four. One is features, the other is technical things, knowledge acquisition, and bug fixing. Those are the four categories of backlog items. They are there the same.
So should I be able to say, like, if I need a hardware setup, something like that, should I fall under technical things?
Yeah, because you need to set up time for that. You'd be careful. You put that in the product backlog if it's something that one member of your team is going to do. I mean, if you are going to ask to the IT people to do that for you, it's not part of your backlog, assuming that they are a different department and a different thing. But if we are a team, 3, and one of us is going to spend time during the week, during the sprint, setting up a server, then that is a technical thing. There are going to be tasks involved, and those tasks are going to be assigned to one of us. Usually it's not the case. Usually the idea is that the team is going to be working in the software developing thing. It is not our responsibility to set up technical things. The most technical that we are going to go is to install libraries, if that is something like very hard to do. Technical things. That is kind of an open category. The same idea with learning things. Good? Okay, guys. So moving forward with the topic, estimation. We are here. Somehow a big picture is we review how to go from an idea to requirements, either in a agile way or in this plan-based way. We review the diagrams, we review these backlog ideas. At the end, for the plan-based, it could be a good idea to have an estimation, but this is not something so far that we put in a document. The idea for the estimation start to be kind of important, critical here. When we move these features to the task, and when each feature needs to have an estimation of points, numbers that we can move to, like how many weeks or how many times one person or the group of person is going to be involved. Here, this estimation topic become critical. Now, as you can notice, you are working with an estimation only with these random numbers, poker planning, or use figuring out complex or not complex, big numbers, small numbers. That is good. That works. That is enough. Sometimes you could be wondering, there is any other way in which I can figure out how many hours do I need for a project, or how many people could be a good idea to get involved in the project. With your experience, with the time, you're going to get these numbers. You're going to figure out these numbers. And the only way that you're going to figure out the numbers is because of your experience. There is no other way. You're going to compare the new project with previous projects that you did or that you get involved, right? The big issue is what happened when I do not have experience. Because even if you become the best developer ever, you're going to be a very good developer with probably one particular category of projects, web, mobile, embedded, I don't know. But be an expert and have experience in all the different categories of projects could be something that do not happen in any moment in your life, not only right now, but you could be wondering like, how difficult could it be to do this? And there we can use some tools. We're going to talk about one in particular. Let's see. Can you agree that more or less having experience with one particular kind of project, or your experience with any project that you did as a student or as a professional, this idea of experience is something that maybe the computer can learn about it? Because you as a human, you get experience developing software, and then you can estimate the next project. There could be any way to like have a tool, a computer program that could help me to the estimation, just because that computer program, I can teach the computer about the estimation of several different projects, like put data there, and then just ask the computer about, hey, computer, I have this project. How many times, how many people do you think that I am going to need for doing this? I am talking something about kind of machine learning, but with software developing projects, right? I mean, that is the thing that you do with several other things, is you put information in the computer and you ask the computer to learn about those things, create relationships, connections, and then you just come with new information, a new case, and you put that new information inside of the computer, and you ask the computer, can you estimate this new thing based on the previous experience that you have? That is experience, right? Previous data, new case, tell me, what do you think? Good? Okay, now, that is the tool that we're going to review. To be clear, most of the information that the computer is going to need to estimate something new is going to be connected with different factors. We're going to talk about the factors. But basically, the way that you teach not only the computer, but someone else about a software project is sharing information about different factors involved in the project. The most important information maybe is how many lines of code do you think that project is going to have? I mean, like, really, if I cannot estimate how many hours do I need, why do you think that I am going to be able to estimate the number of lines of code? Estimation of lines of code could be easy to estimate the number of people or the number of difficulty for the new project. One of the big things that you can use when you are asked about the number of lines of code that you need for a particular software is to think about software design. Software design, do you remember that we started with these kind of blocks when we were talking about your final project? When I was describing the Pac-Man and the different parts of the Pac-Man and how to estimate the Pac-Man. Guys, every single time that you develop a new piece of software, what you're going to do, because object-oriented programming, is to start thinking about the different elements, blocks that your program is going to have. It doesn't matter if it's desktop, web, mobile, or whatever. You're thinking about different blocks. Moreover, if you're familiar with the design, you're going to start splitting those blocks at least in model view controller, you're going to start thinking separate about the graphical user interface, the features that are going to be there, and if there is anything related with database connections and so on. So you're going to have these 3 different elements per block. So 3 times the number of blocks. Then you're going to start thinking about how many classes do you need to do. Then you're going to start thinking about how many methods do you need to create. And the methods that you're going to create are going to be some of them related with features, but a lot of them related with the structure. Software design is not going to tell you how many methods or how many lines of code do you need for the feature, because that's something that you need to figure out with the requirements. But software design is going to tell you how many lines of code do you need to make in order to connect the different parts. Yes, you can know somehow the lines because the design, the connections, is something that is kind of a standard. Let me tell you an example. If you have 2 classes or 2 components, and you know that this class needs information from this class, the connection between them is going to have a particular way to be done correctly. And that particular way to be done is equivalent to a particular diagram design, and that is equivalent to a particular number of lines. Numbers of lines that are extra from whatever you are going to do with the feature, from whatever is going to be the data, or whatever are you going to do with the data. Really? Yes, really. Observer pattern, if you're familiar with the design, a particular draw, a particular number of lines. You don't need to do it. But when you are asked about how many lines of code the program is going to have, the only thing that you're going to do randomly is to estimate the lines of code that are going to be inside of the methods that you need to create for the features. But you are going to add a number that is already there for the design, for the structure, for the connections. If you estimate the cost for this building, the key idea is the cost for the building is more or less a standard for the structure. The cost for the pillars and the walls and all the hard things that should be here, the iron and so on, is kind of a standard from this building and others. The only cost that you need to estimate differently, the features, is the things that are going to be inside. The things that are going to be inside are going to change if you want table, chairs, carpets, and so on, or a different kind of approach. You need to have experience with the features, but for the standard structure, somehow there are things that are going to help you to figure out things. Design, I am not going to talk about design here, but that is something that you review in the 564. Now, for this class, let's assume that we just can figure out the parameter randomly, worst case scenario. This could be very helpful. If you have it, it's going to help. If not, well, we can do something about it. Anyway, let's see. How many lines of code? Do you remember that the Pac-Man is 1,200? 1,000? Yeah. The thing that I showed you was 500. The thing's moving. You have been programming for a long time, and I am sure that you're familiar with what is the meaning of lines of code. I am sure that if you mention 100 lines of code, you know that 100 is nothing. But I am sure that if you notice like 1,000, it's like, well, that is the Pac-Man, but it still is nothing, right? Question, how many lines of code can you create in one day? How many lines of code can you create in 1 hour? There is a standard, right? There is a number. What is the standard, the number, the magic number for one developer 1 hour? General, average. Do you know the number? 10. More or less. 10 is correct. Are you telling me that a developer is able to do 10 lines of code in an hour? 10 lines of code, that is the standard. Wait, those are not the lines of code that you can write. It's not about the speed. It's about at the end of the project. When you finish working in the Pacman and you divide the total numbers at the end in the system, divided by the time and the people that was involved, it's like, okay, this looks like the average is every single people creating 10 lines of code per hour. So those are the 10 lines that are there at the end, because you're going to insert lines of code, delete lines of code, do testing, fixing things, changing things. 10 lines per hour, like the estimation for all the things that are going to happen. And at the end, you're going to have something working. It's not my number. It's not the average of my students. It's not the average of you. It's in the textbook. It's the average outside, real. Why I am telling you this number? Because if you think about the Pacman, and I told you the Pacman is 1,200 lines of code, 1,200 lines of code. If you tell me that you can do the Pacman in one day, it's like, you are overestimating your capabilities. Because yes, you can be a very good developer, but thinking about doing the Pacman in one day, well, unless you have experience developing the Pacman before and you already have something that you can reuse and so on, basically what you're telling me is you are not considering the testing, you're not considering the problems that you could have, you're not considering that something could be wrong with whatever could happen. The estimation of one day for the Pacman is like kind of very low. If you go tell me 1 week, probably that looks more like, okay, you are in the standard. I am not talking about you are good or bad developer. I am talking about you are good or bad estimating the situation. Good? Okay, with that number in mind, I have a tool. One of the parameters for this tool is going to be that, the number of lines of code that you think the system is going to have. How are you going to get that number? Again, your experience, again, software design, again, thinking about you can create 10 in an hour. The point is, for this tool, COCOMO, you can use the tool to replace or to use the computer as a source of experience. Again, machine learning, the tool is there, the tool have data, that data. And the only thing that you're going to do is tool, help me, I have this project with these parameters, with this input. How many people do I need? How many times do we need to ask for? Now, remember, machine learning, always, always, always is going to be the quality of the output, the quality of the input, the quality of the data. COCOMO #1 is a tool that was from the 70s. It's a tool that started with 63 projects. Moreover, all these projects were waterfall based. All the projects were projects done in this plan-based approach, requirements first, testing at the end. Yeah, this is COCOMO. Professor, that is going to help us because we're going to work in IO and because we're not going to do projects in the aerospace thing. Don't worry, there is a second version of the same tool. My point is information with projects. The information from the projects, I am going to share you what kind of information is there. But it's all about the developing process, not only the lines of code, not only the source code, but every single factor in several different categories that happen with the projects. Okay, so big picture. Can you agree that if you put information like the lines of code inside of the computer for software projects, then you can get some kind of formula, an equation, or artificial intelligence to tell you what is going to happen with other inputs? In particular, if each of those points is a project and the axes are particular features in a 2D space, 2 features, you can create an equation, and that equation can be used to estimate new results with new values for the input. In particular, are you familiar with this word? Do we know what is that? It's something that you can do with the computer, right? For use, I am curious. That is supervised or unsupervised learning? What are you talking about? Is one category of supervised learning. What is supervised learning? You give the computer inputs and the correct result, right? Inputs are the correct result. I am going to give you a lot of information about projects, software developing projects, and I am going to give you exactly how many people work in that project and exactly how many times those people need to complete the project successfully. I have the information, time and people, and I have the information, all the parameters of the project. I give you that, and then I am going to ask you, this is a new project. These are the new factors. Can you tell me, using the previous information, regression, how many people I need and how many times this new project is going to need? Makes sense, right? Easy. Now, if we can do that with other data, we can do that also here. You're going to review this with more details in 566, different thing. In 566, you go totally inside of project management, planning. You're going to start with this tool. Here, I am going to cover only one day today. And my goal is for you to give you an example of how to estimate the factors. But obviously, the tool is useful for more things. Anyway, COCOMO 1, waterfall. There is a COCOMO 2. COCOMO 2, as you can be expecting, an improvement with new data, agile projects. COCOMO 1, requirements at the beginning, everything after. COCOMO 2, more like an iterative process, a spiral process, more like several iterations. Not particularly limited to the agile process. They are not all of them agile projects. They are just iterative projects. Projects in which you do not have the requirements at the beginning and you are working requirements, design and developing in several iterations. Those are the projects there. Good. So we do not need to know machine learning. We do not need to know the details of the project. The only thing that we need to do, I am sharing with you, is, okay, can I use that tool? I want to use the tool. I want to try the tool. The tool is online. The address, you can connect. The interface of the tool is going to be something like this. Not exactly user-friendly. It doesn't matter, it's a tool. You are going to be asked for a lot of things. Two categories of questions. Two categories of features that you are going to input as information for your new project, and the computer, the regression algorithm, is going to use to calculate how many people and the time that you need to complete your project. Information number one at the top. Did you notice the three first rows? Do we understand what I am being asked to put there? Let's see. When you run the tool, it's like, what is that there? Okay, number one. I am going to start to the top, down. By the way, homework, I am going to ask you to use the tool to estimate something. So please take note of what you need to input in the tool. Later, I am going to ask you to do something. One, did you notice that at the top, the thing that I am being asked about is lines of code? Moreover, did you notice that at the top, something that the tool is asking me is lock? Are we familiar that the LOC is lines of code? Okay, help me. What is the difference between lines of code, S lines of code, E lines of code, L lines of code. Do we understand the difference between those 3, 4 things? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, no, go. Lines of code is the same that source lines of code. Lines of code, or SLOC, source, is any line in your software. Any line. What are you talking about? I am talking about like there. How many lines of code? How many S lines of code? 4. Really? The line with the closing curly bracket is 1 line, and the line with the if is 1 line? Yes. Lines of code. I do not care about what is the content. For me, it's just lines of code, and that part of the software have 4 lines of code. No, that is not good. How is going to be the same, the closing curly bracket, that the line with the condition? Because remember, I mentioned that before, you have 10 lines of code per hour. So, and that is 4? Like half an hour, okay. Yeah, that is 4 lines of code. Now, here, there is a different measure. E. E lines of code, effective lines of code. The same. The only thing is, when you put the S, you are telling the people, yes, I am talking about the original ones, the lock. When you put lock, sometimes what happens is that people think like, you forget to put something there. No, I do not forget to put anything there. I am talking about this, the source lines of code, the original ones, the everything. No, that is a very good question. The only thing that I am not going to count here, and this is a different process, I am not going to count comments, and I am not going to count empty lines. I am going to count everything that has something for the computer as a lines of code. Why? Because the comments and the white spaces are going to be counted for a different metric. Something that we're going to review later, metrics for the software, is we count the number of lines that are comments, and we do an average, a ratio, with the lines of code versus the number of lines with comments. And another thing that we do is we count the number of white spaces, and we do the ratio with white spaces and characters that are not white spaces. And those 2 numbers are going to talk about your source code, the quality of the source code. But well, that is a different story, metrics. Lines of code, anything there that is source code. Effective lines of code. Effective lines of code. Which of those 4 you think are not effective? And why? Brackets, they are the limiters. How many lines of code there are effective? Effective, really doing something. How do you know those 2? Can you put that in a condition for the computer? The lines of code that ends with a semicolon or open the curly bracket. If you think about Java, can you agree that anything ending with a semicolon or anything opening a curly bracket, those are lines that are either conditions or loops or instructions? Instruction could be whatever instruction is, calling a method or anything. Those are usually the things that you're going to be looking for in an effective lines of code. And if I ask you how many effective lines of code do I have there, your answer is going to be 2. You have 2 effective lines of code, 2 source code lines that are doing really something important. Make sense? Good. Guys, I don't care about the effective right now. Logic lines of code, very particular, very important. You know what? Which of those 2 is really, really something that could use more of your time? And I am sure that you're thinking about the condition, the logic part. Why? Because the condition is controlling whether or not something is going to happen. The condition, you are going to take time to figure out what is the condition. Go back to your 110 class, and in your 110 class, when you were doing these loops to print something, you spend time, testing time, figuring out whether the condition is lower than or lower or equal than or something else more complex. The logic lines, or the lines that are related with the logic of the program, are more complex, more important, more challenging than just the lines that have an increment of a number. That is the reason, because you can also count them in a different place. But again, I don't care. I don't care about the logic 1. I don't care about the effective 2. What the tool is going to care is about all the lines in your program. Guys, the tool is going to ask you for all the lines. The assumption is, remember, that you are good developers. The assumption is that you are not going to have these lines doing nothing. The assumption is that, yes, you're going to have maybe this opening curly brackets alone. Okay, no problem. But most of your source code is going to be clean code, code that is easy to read, code that do not have garbage inside, a lot of lines that can be converted in one. For instance, you are not going to have 4 if conditions there. Probably you are good developers, you have 1 if that a condition is composed. Things like that. The assumption is there are good people involved. Anyway, the tool is asking you for lines of code, which is easier to calculate than going to the details of the others. Clear? Now, thinking about lines of code, 2 ideas. Idea number 1, the project that you want to estimate is a fully new project. Like I am asking you to do the Pac-Man from scratch, right? If you are doing a project that is totally new, the only thing that you need to worry is about this first row, new. Tell me, how many new lines of code you are going to put in your project? And here in this box, you put the number. Professor, and how do I know how many lines of code I am going to create? We go back to the idea of experience. This is regression. The good news here is whatever number you put there is an estimation that is going to be compared with closest numbers, not with exactly that number in a project. Tell me for the Pac-Man, how many numbers do you think you are going to use? Maybe for some of you, it's going to be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Okay, don't worry. Even if you tell me 3,000, 4,000, that is far more than the correct number, later, I am going to ask you another questions that are going to help me to figure out whether or not that number is something that I can trust. Make sense? Just give me a number to the computer to start working and to start figuring out what are you working on. Option number 1, give me all the numbers, new project. Option number 2, wait, I am not going to start the project from the beginning. The professor gave me an initial version of the Pac-Man. I give you in my slide this Pac-Man, garbage Pac-Man, that is the yellow rectangle with the ghost garbage with the dot in white, right? Okay, if you have that scenario in which you are not going to start from scratch, but you are going to reuse something, a better way for me to estimate is the line number 2. Guys, if you work in the line number 2, you do not need to worry about the line number 1. It's not a new project, it's a reused software case scenario. In the scenario number 2, you can notice that you are going to be asked for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different numbers. It is mandatory to use all of them? No, it's not mandatory to use all of them. You use the one that you have information. You use the one that corresponds to the project that you are doing. Anything that do not apply to your project, anything that you cannot answer, just ignore.
So what about cases where different people write different ways? So like there are times when someone writes code and it's 5 lines, same code can be 5 lines.
You have important thing with this tool. The goal of the tool is 1 people is going to be filling the data, right? 1 people. So one people could be the project manager, and what I am going to input there is kind of my average or my evaluation of the standard one person in my team can do. Either I can select the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. Something that I am going to show you is usually we do 2 estimations with that, worst case, best case, and then my project is going to be something in the middle, close to one or the other. I do not know, depending on the problem, the people, and so on. But this one person doing this. You can do this by yourself, like, okay, I want to solve my own scenario. And even in projects that you already did. And it's like, okay, I am in the standard, my project is in the standard or not. You're going to find several times that you do things faster than the estimation here. The estimation tend to be kind of bigger than the reality, because the idea is for the project manager to do not make a short estimation.
So even in some of the languages, let's say React, we have components, class components and function components. They both work different. And I've worked where someone was using class while I was using function. And there's like a lot of difference when it comes to coding, just defining the variables and everything.
This is scenario, and this is very good point. This tool in particular is COCOMO 2. COCOMO 2 is object-oriented programming in the style of Java, C, C++. C++ with objects, C without objects. So the consideration of the projects that are there is this source code in which you have all those garbage. There are other programming languages in which this could be used one line. The projects there do not consider that a scenario. Trying to use this tool with that kind of languages is kind of, no, the information that I have is from a different kind of project. That could be exactly the same problem that using COCOMO, the original one, with a project that is agile. It's like, no, the information that I have is for projects that was done different way. Remember, machine learning regression is all about the quality of your result is whether or not the case that you are asking for match the information that you put there at the beginning.
So COCOMO is like very specific to object-oriented programming.
COCOMO 2, yeah. It's very specific to object-oriented programming. In particular, most of the projects there are C, C++. The timing is 80s, 90s. So the projects there, the kind of project that developed there is more like C, C++. A few of them Java, 90s. Nothing about new languages, including Python, Go, and others, because they are smaller. Different things. There are no information for that. Good. Okay, guys. Again, it's just to figure out an idea. Can I use this thinking about these languages? The goal could be, or for a project manager perspective, is if I can estimate how long or how many time or how many people do I need in order to create this project in Java, but I know that another programming language is better for this project. My point is, at least I have an idea of how many people and how many time do I need in Java, but I know that with this programming language or this tool or this technology, I am going to be, or I should be faster, standard. So that number is just a really big number that should be really bigger than the real that I am going to have for my project. Is just think about asking a friend that only program with C++, and your friend is going to give you a number, and you're going to think like, okay, that is your number in the things that you know, but in my project, with my technology, with my things, that is kind of the big number that I should not reach. At least you have a number for the biggest kind of top line. Okay, now, when you're going to reuse something, I want to be sure. Number one, you need to tell me how many lines of code, again, but then I am going to ask you about percentages. Percentages related with the source code that you give me here. For instance, okay, I am going to do a new Pacman. How many lines of code? I already mentioned 3,000. I think that I am going to do the Pacman. I am going to be running 3,000 lines of code. That we together with my team, we're going to do 3,000. Okay, 3,000. Do you have something that you can reuse? Yes or no? And if yes, tell me. Number one, you are going to reuse the design? Okay, which percentage of the design you could be reusing? The design, like the class diagram that I show you. And maybe for the class diagram, you're going to tell me like, that class diagram looks very well. I could be reusing all that class diagram and maybe adding some things, but I think that one, I can reuse almost all of them. Moreover, if I reuse all of them, that class diagram is going to be at least 50% of my final product. I mean, how many more classes or how many more things do you need to ask in my class diagram? And maybe you're thinking about childs for the ghost, something like a delegate for the maze. I don't know, you start thinking about classes and modules. If you do that, you can think like, okay, how many, the percentage of the final is the one that I give you? 50%? I don't know, for the pack. Okay, wait, 50% for the design. What about the source code? I am giving you source code. Yes, I give you some classes. How many of that source code that I give you is going to be your final project? Can you reuse? Yes, all of my source code, right? What percentage of the source code is going to be a final Pacman working? And obviously there, you're going to go down like, no, this is kind of 10% of the Pacman, 5% of the Pacman, 1% of the Pacman. I don't know, you can think about it. I think I give you more than 1%, but obviously I give you less than 50%. I give you some ideas. Percentage of the source code that is going to be there. And you can think about what is going to be there. How many are you going to modify? You're telling me that 1% is going to be what I give you. Okay, 99% is something that you need to add, to modify. 99% is you, 1% was mine. The design, 50-50, 50% more you, 50% I give you. Figure out an idea. Percentage at the end. This, very tricky. Integration. Tell me, how many lines, because we're talking about lines, right? How many lines do you need to add or modify, whatever, in order to integrate what I give you with the things that you're going to do? There is some lines, something that you need to do to do the integration. Obviously, my goal is that the lines for the integration is 0. You are going to do inheritance, but that is not integration. That is just continue with the developing. Integration is going to be more like, okay, you need to develop an adapter, talking about patterns, a new class that the only goal of this class is to connect the two things. It is not the case, probably it's going to be 0. You need to tell me about percentage of assessment or assimilation. Assessment, do you need to test my source code? It's like I give you source code, but before reusing my source code, you need to take care like, let's review that the source code from the instructor is working. Hopefully not the case. It's just, you can run it and it's working. But in other kind of project, you can be thinking like, no, we need to test this before. The last two numbers for the Pacman, you can just ignore, empty. The first two, it is up to you. If you want to give me some credit, probably in your design, 50% is mine. Probably in your source code, 90%, 99% or 90% is yours. And the other is something that I give you. Or you can just tell me 200 lines of code and all of them are going to be new because we're not going to take care of or review whatever you share with us. Makes sense? Obviously, you can have a different thing. It's not about reuse. It's about a project in which you are going to modify the source code. Guys, do we understand the difference between reusing source code and modifying source code? Reuse is taking the source code without modification. Do we agree? If you're going to reuse my source code, you are not going to change anything that I give you. My classes are going to be there intact at the end. In fact, if I ask you to reuse my source code, I am asking you to do not touch my classes. I can just take your classes and add my classes, not the ones that you take or the ones that I share, but new version of my classes, and you never put anything there new. My classes should be independent of yours, right? That is reuse. No, I am not going to reuse. I really need to modify your source code. Modify. I need to add variables in your classes. I need to add methods in your classes. I am going to recompile your classes. Line number 3, source code. How many? Considering that you are going to modify some of my classes, that you are going to change my source code. Different scenario, and as you can notice, more questions. And more questions, in particular the last two. Very easy things. I am going to start with the last one. It's like, you're familiar with the source code that you're going to modify, yes or no? My Pacman, if I give you my source code and for any reason you're going to modify, hopefully, because I spent one class explaining you my source code and my ideas, maybe you can put there like, yes, one, I am familiar. I receive an explanation. The source code is very short. I can consider myself familiar with that source code. It could be the opposite case. You receive legacy source code, and for the legacy, you're going to need to change something because maybe there are errors, and you are totally not familiar with that. 0. It's a yes or no question. Why? Because if you are not familiar, obviously, you can be thinking the estimation should be higher. If you're familiar, the estimation is going to be standard. Understanding. Okay, one thing is if I am familiar, yes or no. Another thing is, what do you think about how easy it is to understand the source code that you receive? You can be familiar with my source code. I explain here everything, but I do not explain to you line by line, right? So maybe when you think about the whole thing, it's like, okay, yes, I am familiar. The professor tells us that this doing the Pac-Man, the ghost, the maze, separation, patterns, and so on. I think that I am familiar with that. Now, you take a look to my source code and you found things like, what is this? Maybe I am calling functions in a way that you do not usually use. I am using some functional programming in Java. You are not familiar with that. So it's hard to understand. Even though you get the idea of the Pac-Man and my classes and so on, you are not familiar with functional programming and my Lambda calls or whatever. You can put a percentage there for understandability. Makes sense? Obviously, the idea or the opposite. You have a project that you are not familiar at all, so familiarity is 0, but you take a look to the source code and like, okay, this is very easy. If conditions and some patterns here, yeah, it's easy. I am considering that this is easy to understand. I am not telling that I understand that. I am telling that I think that this is easy to understand because remember, I am used trying to estimate the thing. I am not doing the thing. 3 scenarios, all of them involve lines of code and some survey questions that you can tell me about it. All of them subjective. There is not a correct answer, but obviously, better your answers, more accuracy in the estimation that you are going to run. Make sense? Garbage in, garbage out. If you answer here like 100, 100, 100 for everything, you're going to get some answer there that is crazy. If you answer 0 for everything, you're going to get an answer that is crazy. Clear. Next, let's move down. Did you notice 1, 2 sections? Did you notice number 1, software scale, number 2, software cost? There are 2 important things that you need to consider when you're going to do a project, and that is going to affect the cost of the project. Cost of the project. We are always talking about people and time. Why? More time, more money, more people, more money. At the end, is the cost is about the people and about the time. When you think about a software project, is 2 things. Number 1, the scale of the project. We are talking about the project, and for the project, the scale. The scale. What? Yeah. Tell me about these 5 elements that are going to help me to determine the scale of the project. Let's see. Scale. All the scale, and I am going to go back to the picture, but every time that I ask you for the scale, something that you need to consider is any change on the values for the scale drivers is going to be exponential. Exponential. If I ask you about something, I asked you about this, team cohesion. How cohesive is your team? How good friends you are working together? And the answer is going to be there something like high, low, normal. You notice that is there nominal, normal. So how good friends you are? The usual, the normal. If you move to low friends or high friends, you are changing one value, but the impact in the model is going to be exponential. So if you move to we are normal friends or bad friends. If you move to bad friends, boom, it's not going to be a small change, it's going to be a huge change for bad. And if you move to we are good friends or very good friends, it's going to be a big change to a short period of time to finish because you are very good friends. So you are going to work very well and very fast. The change there, even though you change only one item, one selection there, from 1 to 2 or 1 to 0, the consequences are exponential. Now, for the others, the code drivers, product, platform, people, and projects, we're going to talk about them. They are not like the previous one. They are not like this exponential. So what I am telling you, the scale drivers are maybe the most important ones that either you keep nominal, or if you make a change, it's because you are 100% sure that that change really represents the reality. Make sense? The others you can play, and the others you can play from very low to very high, and it's more or less linear situation. Values. Let's review the values. Here. Scale drivers. I am talking about that particular place there. Guys, a question that I am going to ask you. Which are the best values for these scale factors? Which are the best case scenario? And I am representing those best case scenario with my happy face. The best case scenario for those scale drivers are these values. We are here in the nominal, and the best case scenario is not the nominal. The best case scenario is be here. But again, be careful, moving here is very positive. The worst case scenario is here. Best case scenario for the scale drivers is huge values, because exponentially you are going to decrease the time and the people that you need. Questions, just to be sure that we understand, the tool is going to ask you about precedentness. What is that? What is the question there? What I am being asked about precedentness. Have you been in a familiar situation? Have you been in that situation before? Are you familiar with this kind of software? I do not know. Maybe. Could be. Keep the value in nominal. Yes, for sure. This is the second time that I do a Pac-Man video game. Move to the best case scenario. I am familiar, largely familiar, generally familiar. Someone put the value that best match your situation. Again, remember, you are trying to estimate people and cost. Your best answer, your best estimation, period. Best case scenario here, yes, but do not lie. Flexibility. What is the question about flexibility? The answers look familiar. Is Agile flexible? What exactly? Yes, but okay, that is going to be one thing, but not here. Flexibility. I am talking about your goals. I am talking about there is any flexibility about which part of the system you finish first. And if you are working with Agile, that is totally true. It's up to you which part of the system you finish first, right? Okay, no, wait. The customer tells us that the first thing that he wants or she wants is this, and the next week this, and the next week this. So we do not have any flexibility. You need to finish those things like that. Can you agree with me that the second scenario is going to be more problematic than the first scenario? For the second scenario, you need to consider maybe more time, more people, because more testing, more situation can be happening. So flexibility is a good thing to have. If flexibility, I am the one deciding my goals, like Agile, that is going to make the cost go down. Again, the assumption is that you are going to finish the project anyway. The assumption is that if you have the flexibility of deciding your partial goals, that is going to help you to finish on time versus do not having the flexibility. Flexibility, again, I have no idea. Even if you're working in an Agile scenario, nominal could be a good idea. Again, you can play in Agile between nominal and high. You cannot go down. If you go down, probably you are working in a different kind of project management thing. It's plan-based. But in general, you can be nominal to high. Resolution, risk about the architecture, resolution thing. Resolution of what? Problems, risks. Guys, I need to ask, do we understand the difference between a problem and a risk? Problem, risk, what is the difference? A problem is something that you have already. You have a problem. What is a risk? The potentiality of having a problem. A risk is, okay, we have this risk. We do not have these problems. They have happened yet, but we have this risk situation. Tell me, if we think about the risky situations, again, not about the problem, but about all the things that can go wrong with the Pac-Man. We're doing the Pac-Man, right? So if we're doing the Pac-Man, you can think about all the things that can go wrong with the Pac-Man. I can be starting working with my sprint, and I am going to be doing this task or that or there. What things can go wrong? The listeners are not going to work. The thread for the Pac-Man maybe is going to crash. I have no idea about how the thread can be done. Think about your problems, and then just tell me how easy could be for you to solve those problems if they happen. Again, we're talking about this potential risk of something happening and the potential skills that you have to solve that situation. Risk, fire in this room. It's not a problem that we have. There is no fire anywhere. Potential risk could happen. There is oxygen in the air. Fire could happen. What is our risk resolution potential? How prepared we are to deal with the fire? Have anyone here been in a fire before? Have anyone here know what to do if there is fire there? Do not answer, but it's like probably more or less. The expectation is that at least we are in a nominal situation. Nominal situation. We have an idea about what to do. We are not firemen. We cannot be here. I am an expert working with that. I work with that every single day. But at least I have a pretty good idea of what to do, a standard idea like you. Nominal. No, I have a problem. I am scared of the fire. Okay, put down things because you are going to go crazy if the fire is there. We understand the value, risk mitigation capabilities. Next, I already mentioned this. Team cohesion. Guys, there is this word cohesion talking about the software, right? Do you remember? Cohesive elements. But here the question is about the team. Usually, the recommendation is nominal, unless you have been working with the same people for a very long time, and every single time that you work with that people, you have a great experience and you love each other every time that you work together. I mean, nominal experience is good to have. Again, if you have been working for years and you love each other because you enjoy working every single time, then you can move this estimation here, and therefore the estimation of the people, you people, and the time is going to go down. Very risky situation. There is always the possibility that this is the first time that you're going to have a fight because this particular project you do not agree. Always possible. Anyway, process maturity. Guys, another topic that you cover in 566. If you work in a company, the company, the developing team, you can measure the maturity in the company. It's not your maturity as a people. It's the maturity of the process that the company followed to develop software. How do you measure maturity? There are several different ways. Obviously, there is a standard. You want to search for CMM, capability maturity modeling. It is not mandatory that the company follow that thing, but the idea is any company measure the maturity of the process that they follow. Maturity basically means that they follow the same process every time that they develop a piece of software. And you're going to go to the company and you're going to learn that process and you're going to follow that process, and everything is there for the process to be followed. Tools and so on. Usually that is going to be the case, but again, for the process, the maturity. And there is going to be a question there about the maturity of the process, assuming that you are in this company. Again, it's not about you. You are mature, yes, the process in the company. Good? Those are the factors that make the estimation to go exponential. Now, by default, all of them nominal. That is fine. You can move the ones that you want according with your particular situation. The ones below, code drivers, your product, the people, the platform that you're going to use, and the project in particular. Questions about those elements. Let's start by columns, right? Columns. This one, product, my first column. Guys, again, for these guys, the best case scenario in the values is low, not high, low, nominal, and I want to move them to low, low. For the drivers of the product, let's see, reliability, this word here. Do we understand what I mean? Reliability of the software, what that mean? If you are okay or not with failures. Having failures is critical or not. When you have something that the failures are critical, you ask for a high level of reliability. This is a non-functional requirement, remember. So basically the question is whether or not you have these requirements and whether or not you care about them. What do you think about reliability in the Pac-Man? Nominal or very low? You're concerned about the Pac-Man failing. Very low. Why? I don't care if the software crash. The user can run the software again. In which scenarios we move to this, and you notice very high is the last one. Only one case, human lives involved. Any other thing you don't care. If my operating system, your operating system don't care. You get an update, and if something fails, you are going to get another update next week. It's not failure concern. Size of the database. Professor, size of the database for the Pac-Man. We do not have a database in this Pac-Man. What do we put here? Very low. What does it mean very low? There is no database. Very low. Why? I do not have a database, period. Complexity of the product. Guys, you can know the product or not. You can be familiar with the product that you're developing or not, but you can answer this question. This product is complex or not? And if you think about all the games that you are collecting requirements, you can agree with me, all of them are not complex. Even though you do not have an idea of how to do the game, like the game of life, I have no idea what I am going to do here, but it's a game. How complex can it be? Again, it's a subjective answer. It's up to you. But most of the time, you're going to move complexity about the complexity of the system. The complexity is going to be connected with the lines of code. Those are, if the system is complex, the line of code could be or could involve some complexity. The what? Very good question. Guys, remember that this is supervised learning. And remember that this is basically an equation that is for regression, right? The numbers here, all these things that you are configuring with the questionnaire, when you select nominal, for instance, what you are selecting is the value for a constant that is going to be multiplied by one factor in the equation. So that is why you notice that the nominal is 1, because you multiply times 1 something, and that something stays the same. When you select something like very low, low, this is the new number. So you can notice that when you multiply something by 0.75 or 0.94, that is going to change to low. Where those numbers come from? Those numbers are from the model. Who calculates those numbers? The guy that created the model. I put the name of the guy before. So it's the work of one person. The numbers are there for the model. When you select the answer in the questionnaire, basically you are selecting the number that you are going to use in the equation. Makes sense? You do not need to know the numbers, really. The tool is going to add you questions. I just put the numbers for you as a reference here. It's the documentation. Clear. Moving to the other factors, and I have time. Quickly. Code drivers for the people. People, if I ask you for your capability doing analysis, you can estimate that, right? Best case scenario, you have some high value. My happy face with the high values. Your experience doing this kind of application. Your software engineering capability. Do we understand the difference between analysis capability and software engineer capability? Software engineering implies more than just analysis, right? But analysis is important, and they separate these two. Analysis, understanding the problem. Transforming your understanding to requirements, design, and source code. Virtual machine experience. If you are doing a project that involves virtual machine. For the Pac-Man, you don't care. If you don't care, you can move to very high. Very high, yes. The last very highs are nothing that do not exist. Professor, we are doing the Pac-Man in Java, and Java have a virtual machine. Yes, but you are not developing the virtual machine. This is when you are going to develop the virtual machine. In the Pac-Man, you are not developing that, you are using one, and this is not asking you about your experience using, is your experience creating. And the last one, programming language experience. You are using Java, so hopefully it's very high. Hardware. Runtime constraints. Do you have runtime constraints? For the Pac-Man, for the games? Not really. Runtime constraints, mostly machine learning things. You need to finish before a particular time established. For the Pac-Man, you do not have this. Memory constraints. You do not have it. Volatility of the virtual machine environment. You do not have it. Usually, if you do not know what the question is about, is I don't have it. Last, project factors. It's going to be developed in multiple places. So you are going to work as a distributed team, or you are all in the same place. You can agree that if you are going to work in multiple sites, that is going to be harder, the communication. The communication is more difficult. or you are going to need more communication. So multi-site developing, if you are working in the same place, is going to be very low. You are together here. So that is a good value. If you multi-site, it's going to be like here, different cases scenarios. I do not put the numbers for that. Software tools, you're going to need to use software tools, yes or no? For software tools, best case scenario is very high, low values is going to increase a little bit the thing. Software tools for the Pac-Man in particular, are you using tools? My IDE, that doesn't count as a tool, it's something extra, something more, something that do not use in other projects. Usually for things that you do not understand or you do not know, one is a good choice. For the tools, one is the thing that you need to consider for all the things that you are doing. Not tools, special tools involved, but moreover, you are not using a tool that helps you to finish before the project, like a game engine or something. Development schedule, not really. I am not giving you a schedule for the Pac-Man. Best values, the lowest ones. So I put the happy face in the values that are the best values, and I leave the other without anything. My homework for you guys, last thing. Can you go and use the tool and estimate the Pac-Man video game? And I am telling you, the Pac-Man is 1,200 lines of code. So you can put 1,200, and you can put there, those are new. And the only thing that you are free to do is, can you calculate the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for the Pac-Man with that number of lines of code? Be careful. Worst case scenario, best case scenario. What I am talking about, worst case scenario and best case scenario. All the values in the surveys with the best value, all the questions in the survey with the worst value. And I just explained to you, I put the happy sad faces about which are the good values, bad values, right? Can you go to the web page? Can you calculate these two things? Run twice this. How many times do you need to do that? Can you do it in 1 hour? It's going to interfere with the project that you are already doing. Hopefully that one is not, it's not going to interfere. Hopefully that one is, yes, we can just go and play a little bit with this and calculate the Pac-Man video game worst and best case scenarios. Yes? Please do it, and we continue talking about this in the review. Thank you.